Okay, hi everyone. My name is Koku with blackfilm.com. We're here to talk about the Disney Pixar film Soul with director Pete Docter,
Hello.
producer Dana Murray, and co-director and writer Kemp Powers. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I was wondering what moved you guys to center the film around jazz music in New York City, because with the type of person that Joe is, he really could have been from any place and still been a relatable protagonist, no?
Yeah, we wanted something that we could root for, like a passion that he had. And, as you look down the list of like scientist, okay, that might be, but it's a little boring on screen. Jazz, music, it's just fun to watch. And jazz seems like a noble, it's not like he's out there to get famous and rich, right? Jazz is about the passion for the music. So it all seemed to just work perfectly. And I don't know if you saw yesterday, we played this clip from Herbie Hancock, who talked about like the purpose of a jazz musician is to take whatever you're given and make it into something of value. And we thought, wow, that's just such a great metaphor for what we're trying to say with the film. So it just like everything
And I
clicked.
think based on Joe's age, I mean, New York City and New Orleans really were the two big options for where to set the film. Just because, of course, jazz is from New Orleans, but New York has always been such a center of jazz, with so many of the most iconic clubs. And a lot of those clubs were actually visual, resources for us, and again, it's tied to Joe's age. I think if Joe, the main character of Joe, were an 18-year-old jazz, aspiring jazz musician, he might have been in Los Angeles, because right now it feels like jazz is kind of coming as much out of LA. But for Joe's age and the history of the art form, New York just felt like a really great place to bring to life.
Sounds good. So, Kemp, I did want to ask you specifically. One thing you did say during the press conference is that stood out to me is that you knew it was important to not be sort of the only Black person to inform what happens with the film. And
Right.
your team, with just everything that you guys shared with us, took tremendous care in making sure that Black voices were heard and consulted with. So how do you think creating that cultural task force that you guys came up with positively affected the direction of the film, but in particular, with regards to your own personal Black experiences?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, it was hard work. It was a very new thing, I think, for everyone involved at Pixar. But I think what that bore out in the end was that people saw how much better it made the film. Not just how much more authentic it made the film, but how much more well-rounded and believable the characters were. I mean, some of the I can't tell you how good it felt to screen that film for a Black audience or screen it for certain people we showed it to and have them unprompted go to places where they said like, oh my God, that brought me back to this place in my childhood. It brought me back to this moment, and have it just feel so recognizable. For me, it was great to look being a playwright, being a journalist before being a playwright, being in Hollywood. I cannot count how many times I've been the only Black voice in the room. And it's a burden that can at times feel very, very unfair. And it also is in many ways used as a pass for other people to say, well, the Black person in the room said this was okay, so it's got to be okay. And people are just looking for a quick pass.
Right,
When you
right.
got a few dozen of us in a room, you're not getting any free pass. They're actually, now we have a conversation. Now we have a discussion. Now you have a situation where I might actually be having a debate with a younger Black person of a different generation who sees things completely different. I mean, I remember getting into a pretty heavy debate with Afton Corbin, who you met yesterday, just about a busker character and how the character should look. And as a busker, and it's just, it's not a bad thing. These are the conversations that a lot of other groups get to have and take for granted that we got to have on this film. And I got to say, it's probably one of the first times in my career that we've been able to have these kinds of conversations. So it showed me what's possible when there really is a genuine spirit of collaboration, and when Black people are made actual partners in the process. That's the key thing.
That's definitely what stood out, was that, as you said, the genuine spirit of collaboration, and just seeing how you all took so much time in making sure that this was just done a right way and not just to do it. And that definitely resonated with me. So it was important for me to understand where you were coming from as far as that. Another question I have for you guys was, generally speaking, how difficult was it to approach the weightier topics of existentialism, pondering one's purpose in life, souls, but still injecting that humor into the characters. You know, how do you make that funny to anybody?
I think the key was character, right? To give each character a point of view that allowed them to be somewhat extreme. You know, like, I don't know, there's something funny about 22 who's like, yeah, Earth, nah, pass. I've seen it all. I've done it all. Like, she's never been to Earth, but somehow giving her that philosophical standpoint then allows Joe to stand up and say, no, you don't understand. And so you have a real argument dramatized through these characters.
Yeah, it was so many, the humor really came so naturally. Like I remember feeling so great once we got to a certain point in the story, saying like, oh, I finally have a way to explain why my beloved Nick stinks so much. You know what I mean? Like, actually, because I'm a lifelong Knicks fan, and I'm like, okay, we got to make a joke out of this. The Knicks don't stink because of Dolan. They stink because there's a force in another realm that is actually messing with them for years and years and years. So, you know, you kind of use this story you tell as a building block to you know, humor, and it's great because there's so many funny people at Pixar. It's not uncommon in the process where we get to it. We do story first. We want to make sure the story is rock solid, but then we do these little punch-up sessions where we'll bring like a whole bunch of funny people into a room, and we'll look at a scene, and then we'll just start spitballing jokes. Like, okay, what about here? What about here? And you kind of come out of it with like all these hilarious ideas that you pick the best ones and you add them in. I mean, it's not a coincidence that just like that everything you see from Pixar just seems to be so like razor sharp with the comedy while also having a strong story that also hits you emotionally. It's because you got to hit every one of those bases in order to get the film to the finish line.
Got it. And I know it took years to make this film, and we just kind of ended up here this way. But this film does feel so timely during the quarantine, as we've all spent months and months of sheltering to self-reflect and just really ponder our purpose. Would you guys agree that Soul may actually be particularly therapeutic and cathartic in this moment?
Yeah, I think we've talked about that a lot recently. Like, obviously, we just want this film to get out into the world, but obviously we want it to be safe when it's ready. But I think we've all had so much time to reflect on our own lives and figure out what's the most important thing we should be spending our time on. And I thought a lot about just the Joe's Museum of like, what would our own individual life museum look like? What would those moments be? And so I'm hoping people really connect with it even more during this time.
I absolutely think people will connect with it. Just from what I was able to see, it's a fantastic take. It makes you think about some very deep topics. It doesn't make it too heavy, but it does make you think. And it's great to have that kind of conversation, especially right now. We just sort of need people to, to connect that way. So again, thank you all for your time. My name is Koku thank you. My name is Koku with blackfilm.com. It was a pleasure to meet you all. You've done something really, really special here. I really appreciate you. And Soul is in theaters November 20th. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care, guys.
Thanks.